This is about a science teacher that his brother had cancer and he passed away. And so he got mad at God. And so, anyways, he's in this class and he says, "Let me explain the problem science has with religion." The atheist professor pauses for his class and then asks one of his new students to stand. According to the rules of empirical, testable, demonstrable protocol, science says your God doesn't exist. What do you say to that, son? Nothing, the student replies. I only have my faith. Yes, faith, the professor repeats. And what is the problem science has with God? There is no evidence, only faith. The student stands quietly for a moment before asking a question of his own. Professor, is there such a thing as heat? Yes. And is there such a thing as cold? Yes, son, there's cold too. No, sir, there isn't. The professor turns to face the student, obviously interested. The room suddenly becomes very quiet. The student begins to explain. You can have lots of heat, even more heat, superheat, mega heat, unlimited heat, white heat, a little heat, or no heat. But we don't have anything called cold. We can get down to 458 degrees below zero, which is no heat, but we can't go any further after that. There is no such thing as cold. Otherwise, we would be able to go colder than the lowest negative 458 degrees. Everybody or objects is susceptible to study when it has or transmits energy, and heat is what makes a body or matter have or transmit energy. Absolute zero, minus 458 Fahrenheit, is the total absence of heat. You see, sir, cold is only a word we use to describe the absence of heat. We cannot measure cold. Heat we can measure in thermal units because heat is energy. Cold is not the opposite of heat, sir. It's just the absence of it. Silence crossed the room. A pin dropped somewhere in the classroom, sounding like a hammer. What about darkness, Professor? Is there such a thing as darkness? Yes, the professor replies without hesitation. What is night if it isn't darkness? You're wrong again, sir. Darkness is not something. It is the absence of something. You can have low light, normal light, bright light, flashlight. But if you have no light constantly, you have nothing, and it's called darkness, isn't it? That's the meaning we use to define the word. In reality, darkness isn't. If it were, you would be able to make darkness darker, wouldn't you? The professor began to smile at the student in front of him. This will be a good semester. So what point are you making, young man? Yes, professor, my point is your philosophy premise is flawed to start with, and so your conclusion must also be flawed. The professor's face couldn't hide his surprise this time. Flawed? Can you explain how? You are working on the premise of duality, the student explains. You argue that there is life and then there's death. A good God or a bad God. You are viewing the concept of God as something infinite, something we can measure. Sir, science cannot even explain a thought. It uses electricity and magnetism, but it has never seen, much less fully understood either one. To view death as the opposite of life is to be ignorant of the fact that death cannot exist as a substitute thing. Death is not the opposite of life, it's just the absence of it. Now, sir, is there such a thing as evil? Now uncertain, the professor responds, of course there is. We see it every day. It is in the daily example of man's inhumanity to man. It is the multitude of crime and violence everywhere in the world. These manifestations are nothing else but evil. To this, the student replies, evil does not exist, sir, or at least it does not exist unto itself. Evil is simply the absence of God. It is just like darkness and cold, a word that man has created to describe the absence of God. God did not create evil. Evil is the result of what happens when a man does not have God's love present in his heart. It's like the cold that comes when there's no heat, or darkness that comes when there's no light. The student was Albert Einstein, and he wrote this back in 1921.
Wow, that's good.